All right, today we're diving into a story that is just, it's so wild it feels like it's straight out of a Hollywood movie. We're talking about how one single trader, a guy in his 20s, completely toppled a 233-year-old financial institution. And this wasn't just any bank, this was literally the Queen's Bank. And the whole thing, the entire collapse, it all kicked off with just two little words.
Okay, so I want you to picture this. It's Thursday morning, February 23rd, 1995. You walk into the Singapore office of Barings Bank, and the place is buzzing, right? The air is just electric, like it always is. But something's not right. You look over at the desk of the firm's star trader, the guy who's basically printing money for them, and he's not there. The chair's empty. And all that's on his desk is this single, small piece of paper with two words scrawled on it. I'm sorry. Now, you don't know it yet, but that little note, that's the tombstone for the entire bank.
So, that empty chair? Yeah, that belongs to a guy named Nick Leeson. He's the general manager, the golden boy, the supposed genius who is single-handedly minting a fortune for the Home Office in London by playing the booming Asian markets. So him not being there is weird, for sure. But that note? I'm sorry? What does that even mean? It's deeply unsettling. And here's the kicker. By the time anyone figures out what it really means, Leeson is already gone. He's fled the country.
Look, to really get the scale of this shock, you have to understand the history here. Barings Bank wasn't some brand new fintech startup. We're talking about an institution founded way back in 1762. This is the bank that financed the Napoleonic Wars. They funded the Louisiana Purchase. They survived world wars, the Great Depression. I mean, this was an absolutely unshakable pillar of the British establishment. And then, poof. In a matter of days, it was sold for the price of a cup of coffee. £1. Just how? How does something like that even happen?
Well, to answer that question, we've got to rewind. Let's go back a few years to 1992. Because this whole massive catastrophe, it didn't start with a big explosion. No, it started with something tiny. A small hidden error and a secret account with a deceptively lucky number, 8888.
Okay, so a big part of this whole mess is a massive culture clash. You see, Barings was, well, it was old school. Stiff upper lip, aristocratic, old money. And Nick Leeson, he was none of that. He was a plasterer's son from Watford, a working-class kid who was hungry, smart, and super aggressive. And you know what? He was exactly the kind of person Barings thought they needed to go out and conquer the fast-paced Asian markets. So they sent him to Singapore to run the whole futures trading operation out there. Now, his job on paper was supposed to be, honestly, pretty boring. It was called arbitrage. And the basic idea is you find a tiny, tiny price difference for the exact same thing in two different markets. In his case, Japanese stock futures in Osaka and Singapore. You buy it for cheap in one place and sell it for a little bit more in the other, all at the same time. It's meant to be a super safe, low-risk way to make small, steady profits. Seriously, think of it like picking up pennies off the street. It's not glamorous, but it's supposed to be safe. But then came July 17th, 1992. This is the moment it all goes wrong. A junior trader on his team makes a mistake. A simple one, really. She sold when she should have bought. The loss wasn't world-ending or anything, just £20,000. But you have to remember, this is the high-stakes, super unforgiving world of 90s banking. An error like that could get you fired, easy. So Leeson, wanting to protect his team and, keep up his image as the guy who has everything under control, he made a choice. He decided not to report it. He chose to hide it.
And that was the first fatal step, the first domino to fall. Instead of just owning the mistake, he created a secret place to hide the loss, a dummy account, a little digital drawer where he could shove the bad trade and, he hoped, just make the money back later on the quiet. No one in London ever had to know. But this one decision, to hide it instead of admitting it, that created the very weapon that would bring down the entire bank.
And what did he call this secret account? Get this, account 88888. Now, in Chinese culture, the number 8 is considered incredibly lucky. It's all about wealth and prosperity. I mean, the irony is just staggering, right? This account, branded with the luckiest number you can imagine, would become a financial black hole, a place where he stuffed all his secret losses, and it would just grow and grow until it consumed everything.
So you can see where this is going, right? What started as a plan to hide a pretty small £20,000 mistake, it just spiraled out of control, fast. Leeson started trying to trade his way out of the hole he dug. And that's when the game changed. He wasn't doing safe little arbitrage trades anymore. No, this was now a massive, high-stakes gamble. And this is where we get into the psychology of it all, which is fascinating. There's a thing called loss aversion. Basically, studies have shown that for us humans, the pain of losing, say, $100 is about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining $100. We hate losing. And for Nick Leeson, the idea of admitting that initial 20,000-pound loss, it must have felt unbearable. So instead of taking the hit, he just took bigger and bigger and bigger risks, all driven by that powerful psychological need to avoid admitting he'd lost in the first place.
And just look at how quickly this escalated. It's terrifying. That initial 20,000-pound loss from '92, that was nothing. Leeson completely abandoned the safe stuff and started making these massive, risky bets on where the Japanese stock market would go. By the end of 1993, the secret losses in account 88888 had ballooned to 23 million pounds. Okay, bad. But then just 1 year later, by the end of '94, that number had exploded to 208 million pounds. He wasn't just digging a hole anymore, he was trying to dig a hole to the center of the earth.
Okay, so the big question, right? Where was everybody? How does a 200 million pound loss just go unnoticed? Well, the answer is kind of insane. The boss is back in London, thought he was their superstar, their greatest asset. See, Leeson was shoving all the losses into the secret 88888 account, while at the same time reporting massive, completely fake profits from his other trades. So whenever he needed more cash to cover his losing bets, he just asked London for millions for what he called client margin calls. And London, totally blinded by the amazing fake profits he was supposedly making, just wired the money, no questions asked. So at this point, Leeson is basically sitting on top of a financial volcano, and he's the only one who can feel the ground shaking. But then something happens, an unpredictable external event, what people in finance call a black swan event, that was about to trigger an eruption that absolutely no one could contain. At 5:46 in the morning on January 17, 1995, that black swan arrived. The Great Hanshin earthquake, a massive 7.3 magnitude tremor, absolutely slammed the city of Kobe, Japan. It was a devastating natural disaster. The city was shattered, thousands of people lost their lives, and the economic fallout, well, it was immediate and it was severe. And when the ground shook in Kobe, you better believe the financial markets shook in Tokyo. See, Leeson's entire house of cards was built on one massive bet, that the Japanese stock market, the Nikkei index, would stay stable or go up. The earthquake sent it into an absolute freefall. Now he was completely buried. He had two choices: come clean, confess, and maybe save what was left of the bank, or go all in. He chose option 2. In a final desperate Hail Mary, he started buying up futures like a man possessed, using the bank's money to try and single-handedly force the entire Japanese market back up. It was literally one man versus the economic reality of a massive natural disaster.
And reality won. The market didn't magically bounce back. For every futures contract Leeson bought, the market just fell further, and his losses compounded exponentially. Within just a few weeks, the total loss hidden away in account 88888 had spiraled to this unbelievable figure, 827 million pounds. That's over 1.3 billion US dollars back then. I mean, this wasn't just a loss anymore. This was more than double the entire available capital of Barings Bank. The game was over.
So, the final act of this whole tragedy unfolded with just breathtaking speed. What came next was a frantic escape, a jaw-dropping discovery, and the final embarrassing end of a 233-year-old institution. But beyond all the drama, there are some really critical lessons to learn from this failure.
And it all came crashing down in just 72 hours. On that Thursday, February 23rd, Leeson and his wife skipped town. They fled Singapore. The very next day, Friday, auditors finally cracked open account 88888 and found that 827 million pound hole. All weekend, the Bank of England scrambled to put together a bailout, but the losses were just too massive. It couldn't be done. And by Sunday, February 26th, it was official. Barings Bank was insolvent.
So what happened to Leeson? Well, he was eventually caught and arrested in Frankfurt. They extradited him back to Singapore, where he was sentenced to 6.5 years in the notoriously tough Changi prison. And the bank, that historic institution that had literally funded empires, it was sold to the Dutch bank ING for the grand sum of £1. Its legacy forever tarnished by the actions of its one-time star trader.
But you know, when you really look at it, this story isn't just about one guy's greed. It's a textbook case of catastrophic institutional failure.
It's about the danger of having a star performer that you put on a pedestal and just never, ever question their results. It shows that all that boring stuff, risk management, internal audits, it's not just about ticking boxes for the bureaucrats. It is absolutely essential. And it's proof that one small hidden mistake, when you combine it with a culture that's blinded by the illusion of profit, can spiral into absolute ruin.
Nick Leeson did eventually get out of prison, but the story, man, the story lives on. And it forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question, doesn't it? Somewhere out there, right now, in some huge institution, what hidden error, what secret 8888 account is just quietly growing in the dark, waiting for one unexpected event to bring the whole thing crashing down?